Why is education important for conflict prevention? I would say, for my subject, history, it's extremely important to move away from this conflict stories where we tell who we won and the dominant group and go into diversity, showing how histories of nations, of worlds are built by different community, different genders, poor and rich people, and in that way going away from this one story which is always fitting just one group and leaving out all the others.
So education is enabling each kid, each child to reach a knowledge and a skill and a competence being and becoming a critical citizen in society, but it will also enable the whole society to reach consensus on vital issues dealing with the future of that society. Without a consensus and without cooperation within the school, there will be no consensus and cooperation in the society.
It is a useful tool because people who belong to different groups, like language speakers or minorities or ethnic background, will have the same feeling of belonging to this community, to the wider community, if they feel that their identities are accepted and recognized. In this respect, I think that the language plays a very important part because education in the language or teaching of the language is a very important part of building the identity of the members of such a group. But of course, then, our experience from the European Charter for Regional Minority Languages also shows that it's not sufficient to just give them education in the language or teaching of the language, but it's also important to build connections between members of different groups. So not to put them in ghettos where only one language will be spoken. And it's also important to have the teaching of history and culture of the other group to the members of the different group, so that in that way they will try to build the sense of a common identity and of the common belonging.
Yes, it's very crucial to have a good education both for majorities and minorities, because unless you have such a type of education, you won't have people with a broad knowledge, many points of reference, and a critical thinking. And unless we have such a critical thinking and broad knowledge, then we won't have people to negotiate new solutions to conflicts and tensions.
Among the ways that education can be useful as a conflict prevention tool is to teach, to make sure that it is ingrained in children, in pupils, the idea that differences, whether we're talking about differences of the color of the skin, the language we speak, or even our sexual orientation, is tolerated. And tolerance begins at school when we are learning, educating children. Intolerance is one of the main causes of conflict around the world. The second aspect is, quite often, if you only have, for example, and we talked about this today, if you only have education in one language, which is not the language of everyone in the country, this also can cause tensions. It can cause alienation, feeling of exclusion. So where you have very large national minorities, or indeed indigenous peoples, very large concentration of them, their language should be the language of education so that it properly reflects the reality on the ground of that country. That some people may have a different language, but that language is part of the national fabric and is reflected in the area of education. And if you have that, you actually have a way of saying, you're part of us and we accept you, and you have a balance which is fair and permits really effective inclusion and participation of everyone as much as possible. This is the way education must be. This is what you have in documents like the Hague recommendations and other instruments of the OSCE, and this is the direction you need to use education in favor of peace, stability, and harmony, and the prevention of conflict.
I think education is a a tool for conflict prevention in a number of ways. I mean, one thing that you can get through education is that you understand about other elements of the society in which you live, about your community, about your country, about the region where you live. You learn about diversity, you learn about the other points of view of people in your region, about their cultures, their languages, hopefully as well. And when you get to know the diversity of your society and you get to know the background of people around you, either through reading or interacting with them in the educational system, it is automatically leading you into a situation where you understand their point of view, and you will have an exchange and interaction that is not leading to conflict, but is more constructive. On the other hand, education is also a way to learn about your own background, about your own history, and about the society that you are part of. And in that respect, what is particularly important for minorities is that they also see the educational system as reflecting their cultures and their concerns, their languages, and their identity in general. And in that respect, when you have trust in society, of which educational system is an element, then you are also less likely to have a conflictual relationship with it. So in a way that builds a cohesive society and in that way prevents conflicts in society. And of course, educational systems also provide you with tools to defend your rights, in the sense that in a situation where there is a conflict and when your rights are undermined in a society, if you have gone through a good educational system, you have learned the right tools to defend those rights, whether it's through different human rights mechanisms or other ways in which that can be done. You are using those tools because you know how to do that instead of going through that in a conflictual manner.